now.
Election night is here, and the stakes are high.
I don't think any of us can remember an election in our lifetimes that was as important as this one.
A battle for control.
Send me to D.C. so I can stand and fight for all of you.
This is a transformative election. It's going to send a loud message to Washington.
The fight for Congress.
There is a lot at stake, and we have to protect our rights.
Tonight, NBC 10 has you covered.
Pennsylvania, it's up to you.
It's all on the line right now.
This is Decision 2022.
Good evening, and thanks for watching this special edition of Decision 2022. I'm Lauren Make. Tonight, all eyes are on Pennsylvania as control of the Senate and the future of President Biden's agenda could very well be decided by voters in the Keystone State. Voters in all three of our states here are making decisions on members of the U.S. House, where control is also in question. And Pennsylvania voters are choosing their next governor with big issues like abortion and education on the line. There is a lot at stake tonight. Here's where we start. Republicans need to gain just 5 more seats to win control of the U.S. House. And in the Senate, Republicans need to gain just 1. 9 Senate races are considered competitive, including Arizona, Georgia, and right here in Pennsylvania. Now, one of those races, those big races tonight, is the contest to succeed Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. That race is between Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano and Democrat Josh Shapiro, the state's Attorney General. Here's a live look at the results just minutes after the polls closed in most of the state. Luzerne County is still open at this point, and we will be watching these results all night. This is just the beginning. Well, the other big race we are watching tonight is for U.S. Senate to replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. TV personality Dr. Mehmet Oz is the Republican candidate running against Democrat Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. And here's a live look as the votes are starting to come in. We have our team of reporters at each of the candidate headquarters tonight. Let's start with Aaron Baskerville with more from Josh Shapiro's headquarters.
Lauren, I can tell you that the mood has changed here just in the last couple of minutes. Once 8 o'clock hit, a lot of folks were able to come in the doors here at the Expo Center at Oaks. They cranked up the music, and of course, they're hoping that Attorney General Josh Shapiro will be victorious tonight. Just to look behind me, you can just see this is where everything will take place. The stage is set. Like I said, the music is pumping. There were just folks down here that just came in, taking photos, soaking up the atmosphere. We did have a chance to catch up with Attorney General Josh Shapiro earlier today. He was voting at an elementary school in Abington. He was there with his family, his kids. His daughter was able to vote alongside him. He said it was a beautiful, wonderful fall day to go out and vote. He also got emotional, saying it was extremely humbling to see his name on the ballot. He talked about some of those key issues in the beginning of this. He talked about abortion. He talked about education, things like that. He also said this is a campaign fighting back against dangerous extremism. So we're going to be here all night. We're going to be watching the results come in. A beautiful day, according to Attorney General Josh Shapiro, to go out and vote. The polls have closed. We'll be here at the Expo Center as this party gets underway. Back to you, Lauren.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Well, now we turn to Camp Hill, Cumberland County, where NBC 10's Brian Sheehan joins us from State Senator Doug Mastriano's campaign headquarters. Brian?
Yeah, Lauren, I can tell you the mood here is like people started gathering in the ballroom about an hour ago. You can see they're mulling about right now, talking amongst themselves, eating and drinking. I have to say, many supporters feel pretty confident about tonight. I just spoke with 2 women who are here from Central PA. They say they see the poll numbers of Josh Shapiro leading the race, but they are confident. There is a silent majority out there who didn't publicly voice their opinions, but voted for Doug Mastriano. Mastriano is rooted in his faith. Anyone who listens to his speech hears him mention God. The backdrop of the stage has a Bible verse on it. Many people here say his religious convictions are what drew them to him. They mentioned his stance on abortion as a big reason why they voted for him. Of course, he does not support abortion rights. The polls, of course, just closed in most Pennsylvania counties a few minutes ago. So now the focus turns to the numbers. I spoke with 2 sisters who were just here a few moments ago, they say, regardless of the outcome, they accept it and that the sun will rise tomorrow. However, of course, they and everyone here are going to be watching the screens very closely in the next hour, 2 hours, as those results start pouring in. Now, I'm in Camp Hill, Cumberland County. I'm Brian Sheehan. ABC10 News. Lauren.
All right, thanks, Brian. Well, there is a lot to break down tonight. We have team coverage from all across our region and some guests with us tonight. Charlie Giroux is a Republican political strategist and the CEO of Quantum Communications based in Harrisburg. And we also have Democratic consultant Mustafa Rashid. He is the president and CEO of Bellevue Strategies based in Philadelphia. Mustafa, let's start with you. It is typical in midterm elections that Democrats or that presidents' parties lose seats. We know that that is the pattern, but this year, this is also coming against the backdrop of inflation. It is also coming against the backdrop of the Dobbs decision regarding abortion and a potential rematch between the current president and a former president. There's a lot going on. So how are Democrats feeling coming into this race, and what do you consider to be the significance?
I think that all the factors that you laid out are very significant. And I think if I remember correctly, other than 2002, when President Bush ran for re-election, like every president who was in power and why his party's lost seats. It is what happens. The issues about the inflation and the economy are real ones. I think President Biden and Democrats up and down the ticket have tried to make the argument about why that they feel like they're best in control, best in charge to put things back together and get on the right track, and hope that voters give them a chance to see this through. And I think that's what it's going to be, a referendum on it. That's what it always turns out to be. And I don't think tonight will be any different.
Charlie, for you, when you look at what happened in 2020, when you look at how President Biden was able to win Pennsylvania, and especially what he was able to do in the suburbs around Philadelphia, do you think Republicans are going to be able to get some of those votes back this year?
I definitely do. I mean, if you look at the right track, wrong track numbers across Pennsylvania, but in the Philadelphia suburbs as well, they're staggering. People think that the country is headed in the wrong direction right now. That portends really, really good things for the Republican ticket up and down tonight.
Yeah, you know, Mustafa, on that issue, if Democrats take a big hit tonight, when you look at those numbers of people saying that inflation is their top issue, is that going to be the conversation that maybe Democrats weren't listening?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Charlie.
I'm sorry. No,
Charlie, go ahead.
Just address the question. I'm sorry. The jump ball.
Yeah.
Mustafa, to you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Charlie. I would say I think that the exit polls, it showed that the economy and inflation were at the top of the list, and voters will respond to how they feel about that and who they feel has the best chance of changing the course of where those issues are.
Yeah, and were Democrats talking about it enough?
I think that it was. I think it was because it was. I mean, those were the issues that were on the table. Women's reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, healthcare. Those were there as well. But the economy that was the main one, and that is as long as we've been following politics, the economy and how people feel about where things are headed. Are they making more money, or is their money lasting longer? Is something that encourages people, inspires, gives them the motivation, and what it is that they're going to vote for, who they're going to vote for, what they're going to vote about on election day.
Charlie, I saw you in Bucks County the other day. I was at an event where you were speaking at, and you were talking about what the polls look like and not to necessarily be paying attention to those polls. But we have a situation where things look very different for the two Republican candidates in Pennsylvania heading into Election Day, with what looks like a very tight race in the Senate and not so much in the governor's race. So how do you explain sort of the diverging there?
Well, you always have different candidates and different issues, and races as diverse as a race for the U.S. Senate and a race for governor. You had very different candidates and very different issues. But you saw on the gubernatorial side, the polls tightened very dramatically in the past couple of days. You had the Trafalgar poll out on Friday that showed it, I think, a little bit over 4 points, which is basically a margin of error race. And as I said at that event in Newtown, simply take the words of Josh Shapiro. He said, don't trust the polls. They're not accurate. So I'll take Josh Shapiro's word for it. And, we'll see what happens tonight. I think that the Mastriano campaign is going to perform much better tonight than any of the polls suggested.
Where do you think that they are going to outperform expectations? What parts of the state, or with what groups?
I think you're going to see it across the state, but you're even going to see it in the Philadelphia suburbs. I was at an event after the one you attended in Newtown, which was a noonday event, and had a couple hundred people there in Montgomery County, right in the heart of Josh Shapiro's home territory. Had 1,000 people out in the late afternoon, when people were ordinarily still at work, et cetera. You have 1,000 people at a gubernatorial rally. I've been through a lot of campaigns in my life. I haven't seen that level of commitment and enthusiasm very often.
Mustafa, one of the things that you and I have talked about before is turnout in Philadelphia, and how important that is for Democrats. And I saw sort of like a number of events in the last couple of days in Philadelphia. But what's your feeling about, whether enough was done leading into today to get people out to vote and get people to turn in those ballots?
That's a great question. And often as goes the state, as Philadelphia County goes, the state goes. And I saw a lot of outreach over the last 3-4 months, and the last 8 weeks in particular, a lot of outreach in Philadelphia to African-American voters, city residents, to make sure that they were registered, that they knew that they could use mail-in ballots as an option, and to make sure that they knew that there was an election and what was the stakes of this election. So I think that was set up very well by the candidates. Today's weather was excellent, which is also helpful. And I think that Philadelphia will perform better than expected for this so-called off-year election. I think Philadelphia do very well.
We saw this past weekend visits from President Biden, visits from former President Obama, visits from former President Trump, all here in Pennsylvania. For both of you, how big of an influence do you think President Biden and former President Trump are on this race, Charlie?
Well, you always have the big guns at the end of the campaign. They're there to rally the troops, to get out the vote. And this is, pretty much pro forma for races, the magnitude and stature of the two races on the ballot in Pennsylvania. So I'm not surprised that all three presidents and former presidents came in. But I'll be honest, if I were a Democrat candidate, I would not want to be standing next to Joe Biden the day before election. I simply wouldn't. I mean, his numbers are awful. And as I suggested before, the right track, wrong track numbers, which really mirror the administration, are as bad as they've ever been. So, we'll see how all that plays out.
Mustafa, the influence?
Yeah, former President Barack Obama was the #1 requested surrogate for Democrats across the country. And I think it was a tremendous opportunity and advantage for Philadelphia to be able to get him here for a rally to talk about the importance of this election and what's on the ballot and what's at stake. And I saw the turnout, you saw the media coverage, you saw people responding to it. It's something that gives candidates and campaigns an opportunity to cut through a lot of the noise and the clutter, to hear from someone who has high favorability ratings and is still very popular within the party. And as I said, is the #1 requested surrogate. And so I think it was a very strong move, and will deliver results for Democrats in Pennsylvania.
So the Senate race coming into tonight, we know it's going to be very tight. Tell me where the two of you are really watching for signs tonight. What do you think we should be watching? What counties are you watching? What are you watching for, Charlie?
Well, geographically, I'm not sure that there's an epicenter, and I'll let Mustafa give a contrary opinion on that if he has one. Obviously, he is correct. Philadelphia is the largest voting bloc in the state, and how it goes often is how the state goes. So I think you can look at the margin there, and hopefully Philadelphia is going to get its count underway in a better fashion than we're understanding it's already started. But hopefully we can get numbers out of there that are relatively fresh. But I think if you look at the southwest corner of the state, where Republicans have been outperforming their ballot numbers in the last several elections, if Mehmet Oz does exceptionally well there, right in John Fetterman's home turf. It's game, set, and match for him.
All right, last word to you, Mustafa.
Yeah, I would say turnout. So what we're looking for on the race is turnout. Has Fetterman's campaign, as his strategy, has it been effective at getting people in Philadelphia to understand the importance? Has it been effective getting people in the entire Southeast to understand the importance of what it means to have him take over the seat, and the issues, his platform, his campaign, his policy, the things that he intends to fight for? He wasn't short of resources in which to be able to do it, as we saw that this is the most expensive Senate race in the country by far. And so messages were out there, messages were heard, like even if you weren't had your head up and paying attention like we do all the time. I think the message got through to people. And again, the end result will be today. Did people turn out? Did they respond? Was the message effective? And I'm hopeful that it was.
All right, Mustafa Rashid, Charlie Giroux, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time and your perspective.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Me.
Thank you, Mustafa.
Well, the candidates, they were up bright and early to cast their ballots today. Democrat John Fetterman voted in his hometown of Braddock, which is near Pittsburgh. Fetterman promises to protect abortion rights and also work to make more in the U.S. if he is elected. And his opponent, Republican Mehmet Oz, cast his vote at Brynathan Borough Hall in Huntington Valley in Montgomery County. Oz is promising to crack down on crime and fight inflation if he is elected. In Pennsylvania's gubernatorial race, Josh Shapiro voted in Montgomery County this morning. The Democrats' family was by his side as he cast his ballot in their hometown of Abington Township. Shapiro's rival, State Senator Doug Mastriano, the Republican in this race, posted a video on Twitter that shows him scanning his ballot today. Mastriano did not say specifically where he voted. Now, mail-in voting is still relatively new in Pennsylvania, and people now have the option of voting that way. Because more people are choosing that means that things could take a little bit longer to get final results. Election workers are hard at work counting the vote inside their facility in Northeast Philadelphia this evening. Well, one of the big races tonight is the contest to succeed Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf. That race is between Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano, Democrat Josh Shapiro, the state's Attorney General. Here is another live look at the results tonight. These results, of course, just starting to come in. The polls closed in most of the state at 8 o'clock. However, in Luzerne County, the polls are still open tonight and will be until 10 o'clock this evening. There was an issue with the availability of ballots earlier. And so this is one of those situations where a judge got involved and made a decision that the polls in Luzerne County, which has been a bit of a swing county, President Trump was able to win that county in 2016 and flip that county along with some others. The polls in that county are staying open until 10 o'clock tonight. However, in our area, in the Philadelphia suburbs, the polls are closed here at this point. Let's take a look at one more race here for U.S. Senate to replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. And we are going to be watching these all night, but let's take a listen to some of my colleagues as they give us an update.
We have Decision 2022 coverage on this election night, and the stakes are high for these midterms as we take a live look at the Philadelphia Ballot Processing Center in Northeast Philadelphia. Now that the polls have closed, workers, they are tallying up all those ballots and the in-person votes. That's where it's happening. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jim Rosenfield. Those polls closed just about 30 minutes ago in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. Let's get right to an early look at where things stand. Voters in Pennsylvania will be deciding two important races. The race for Senate between Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz, which has national implications to replace the retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. And also, we're watching that race to succeed Tom Wolf as governor in Pennsylvania, with Democrat Attorney General Josh Shapiro facing off against Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano. No results to give you at this early stage. But let's go to NBC 10's Leah Uko. She is live in Northeast Philadelphia, where that counting is now underway. Leah.
Yeah, Jim, speaking of results, they are not going to come anytime soon. We just went inside and got an update from election workers about how tedious this process is. So like you said, the polls closed for in-person voting at 8 o'clock today. When it struck the clock at 8 o'clock, that was when election workers could start counting these ballots. But since 7 o'clock this morning, they had started counting the mail-in ballots, including hundreds people had to fix and recast because they had originally mailed in their ballots incorrectly and were notified. So inside, in that process, they first have to sort through the envelopes, put them through a machine. Then the machine will let them know which ones they can count, and then they put it through 2 more machines, all before casting off this ballot. The commissioner, election workers tell us, the chairwoman of the Philadelphia City Commission tells us people need to practice patience when waiting for these results.
If we could start earlier, we would have a decision earlier, or a total, right? But we can't start till today, and we are doing, we're going as fast as we can to count over 100,000 ballots. That we just were able to start today at 7 a.m.
And those 100,000 ballots she's talking about are mail-in ballots. That does not count the drop boxes and the mail-in ballots that might have come today. That's Lisa Deely there. We also heard yesterday from the Secretary of State, both of them stressing this process is going to go through the night, because once they start counting those ballots, they cannot stop. Like in the past, they have to finish the job without taking breaks. We're told that these workers are rotating in shifts. They expect all of these votes to be counted by the latest or earliest, they don't know yet, Thursday at noon. That's the latest from Northeast Philadelphia. Leah Uko, NBC 10 News. Jim?
All right, Leah, thanks for that update. And there is one part of Pennsylvania we want to tell you about where polls are still open, because a judge ordered polls in Luzerne County in the northeast part of the state to stay open till 10 tonight. It's because of the lack of paper ballots across the county. And we have you covered all night here on NBC 10. Join myself, Tracy Davidson, and Lauren Make for a special hour-long edition of NBC 10 News. Coming up tonight at 11, we'll have results from all 3 of our states. And for live results and updates anytime, you can head to NBC10.com and the free NBC 10 app. We'll be back with another live update in 30 minutes. For now, we send you back to NBC News special coverage on this election night.
With more on the count that Leah was just talking about, let's go over to President and CEO of the Committee of 70, Al Schmidt. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me on, Lauren.
Al, you are also a former city commissioner in your former life in Philadelphia, so you know exactly the kinds of things that they are doing right now. Given what we are hearing about a number of different things including how these ballots are going to have to be handled, what are you expecting in terms of timing? What can you sort of lay out expectations for people?
Well, really, I think it's important that voters be patient and have realistic expectations of how long it takes the Board of Elections to count their voters' votes. One reason why it takes Philadelphia a little bit longer is the sheer volume of ballots that they're dealing with. But mainly, it's because Philadelphia goes through a reconciliation process that, to my knowledge, no other county does, where it checks late arriving mail-in ballots against the poll books. So when a voter comes in on election day to vote in person and signs the poll book, they do a reconciliation to make sure that the voter didn't, let's say, turn their ballot in on Monday in the mail, worry about it getting there on Tuesday, show up on Tuesday and cast a vote in person. So there's an additional level of security and integrity to the vote counting process for mail-in ballots in Philadelphia that no other county follows. You can count votes a lot faster when you don't go through that process, but Philadelphia does.
And why is that important? Why is that something that the commissioners have decided that is worth that extra time?
Well, I can only speak really for the past, not for the present in terms of the city commissioners. But for us, I mean, Philadelphia has to deal with just so much scrutiny that most other counties don't. As the biggest city and the biggest swing state in the United States, seeing efforts to discredit the election results from Philadelphia, all sorts of nonsense about, voters voting for dead people and all sorts of other things that have no evidence supporting them at all, no basis in fact. Philadelphia, I think, goes to extra lengths to make sure that there aren't any problems at all. And in the last 3 elections, there was not a single case where a voter was able to cast a vote by mail-in ballot and vote in person on election day. So I think, Philadelphia, with the scrutiny that it's under since 2020, has always taken this extra step, and that delays the process a little bit.
How much does it delay the process?
I'm sorry, Lauren?
How much does it delay things?
Well, there are lessons learned along the way about how to process ballots more quickly. So I would expect, this evening, not that long after the polls close, so it might have already hit by now, that Philadelphia will be able to report probably the first 60 to 70,000 mail-in ballots that they only began processing at 7 a.m. this morning. I would expect another upload of results for maybe another 30,000 around midnight or maybe a little bit after. So I would say probably by 1 a.m. you may be looking at 100,000 votes reported from Philly. They don't yet have the numbers back in from the drop boxes that would have been dropped off in the course of the day today. Those are ones that have to be reconciled, for example, against the poll books, that process that I spoke about a little bit ago. So that will take us certainly into Wednesday and maybe a little bit longer.
You are, I'm sure, keeping an eye on how things are going around the state. What are you watching, and are you hearing about any issues in other counties?
I've heard of issues going on in sort of other counties. One thing that's unique about America and very unique about Pennsylvania is we have 67 different counties, and each county is running elections independently of every other county. So one county might use one type of technology, another county might use, hand marked paper ballots, different systems, some Dominion, some ES&S. Philadelphia is an ES&S county where the voting machines in person are ES&S and also at the tabulation center where the mail-in ballot votes are counted. So there are different issues that you face in different counties. Today was extremely smooth in Philadelphia. It was a beautiful day, as it was through much of the state. And there was a steady turnout throughout the day. And I would expect turnout to be pretty high, probably around 2018 levels. I would estimate between 50 and 55% in Philadelphia.
That was a big one. I just looked at some of those former previous turnouts, and that was a big year. We are hearing people, because this process does take a while, really try to set the stage for what people can expect. And you touched on this, but we even were hearing from the Fetterman campaign, who was trying to get the word out about what we might see in the beginning versus what we might see later. Is that something that you are concerned about, that as the mail-in ballots come in and they tend to be more Democratic, because more Democrats, quite frankly, have just requested mail-in ballots than Republicans, and then you see in-person voting come in, that things may change throughout the night. Are you concerned at how people perceive that, and how do you address that?
I am concerned about it, and it's a very good point, Lauren. And we've seen it in Pennsylvania in the past couple of elections. We've seen it around the country. Historically, up until 2020, Republicans voted by mail just as much as Democrats did. Once the former president really began being critical of mail-in ballot voting, you saw that shift considerably, with a lot more Democrats voting by mail than Republicans. So you're going to sort of see this wave going back and forth starting tonight. So that first, upload of ballots, like I said, probably 60 to 70,000, will exaggerate Democratic turnout. or 10 Democratic results. And then when the in-person results come in, that'll exaggerate Republican results. And then the ballots need to be counted, even though voting ended at 8 p.m., that'll Democratic results again. It's important that people be patient and wait until the last vote is counted, particularly in a city like Philadelphia, which is the birthplace of our democracy.
One of the things that's a little bit different this year is that counties who accepted certain grant monies are going to have to continuously count and keep going. They can't just take a break overnight. In a lot of counties, including the counties in our area, Philadelphia and the suburban counties surrounding Philadelphia, they accepted this grant money. How do you expect that to impact things, or do you?
Well, I know, when I was in office, we never stopped. So we worked in shifts 24 hours a day until our voters' votes were counted. The city commissioner's office, I know, is still committed to doing that. They're going to keep doing that. So there's no breaks along the way. There's no going home for the evening. That was one thing required by law that passed, called Act 88 earlier this year, that provided more resources, but also required counties to continuously count mail-in ballots. One big advantage of that that did not exist before now is that all counties are required by, I believe, midnight tonight to report the total number of mail-in ballots that they received. That's new, and that will tell us a lot. That'll tell us the total number of mail-in ballots that are out there just a little bit later this evening. It'll just be a matter of, going through the whole process and counting them. Remember, counting ballots is more than just, counting a vote. There's a whole process from reviewing the declaration envelope to make sure the voter signed it and dated it, opening that envelope, extracting the secrecy envelope, opening that envelope, extracting the ballot, flattening the ballot, and only then counting that ballot. So from tooth to tail, it's a lengthy assembly line and takes some time.
You mentioned all of the different things that have to be done on the back end when you get the ballot, but on the front end for voters, they've got to sign it, they've got to date it, they've got to put it in that secrecy envelope, and not everyone did that. And we have seen yesterday, we saw a line of people in Philadelphia waiting to try to fix issues with their ballots because the city commissioners posted those lists to try to reach out to people to make sure they had an opportunity to do that. But that's being handled differently county by county. Some counties reaching out to people, some counties, encouraging people to do that, but not necessarily everywhere. We already are seeing one legal action regarding those ballots. What are you expecting in the coming days and weeks, especially given the fact that we've got potentially a very close Senate race here, in terms of what we might see in legal action and how those ballots, the differences between how they're handled county to county?
Well, there's certainly no shortage of legal action affecting every aspect of voting at this point. Mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, as you know, is fairly new. So we're going through some growing pains, and normally it's gradually incrementally adopted over time. So maybe the first year, 10%, next year, 15%. In 2020, we went right to 20%. But in terms of ballots that contain a fatal defect, which is really what you were talking about. Let's say the voter didn't sign it, or didn't date it, or didn't include a secrecy envelope, which you can tell even without opening the envelope. For example, when ballots come into Philadelphia County, they go through a sorter that automatically timestamps them, so we know when they're received, and organizes them by ward and precinct. And we have 1,703 of those in Philadelphia. We call them divisions. The rest of the world calls them precincts. So when they're going through that process, the sorting machine can actually tell if it's missing like a ballot or an envelope, because the ballot is actually, the envelope is actually lighter. As a result, Philadelphia County and other counties notify voters if their ballot is rejected. That allows the voter to, since they're not having their vote count, to still go and get a replacement ballot and vote again without that fatal defect. So just to be clear, it's not a voter casting two votes. There are no two votes cast for that voter. The first vote won't count because it has a fatal defect. So our county and many others go to great lengths to make sure that every voter has the opportunity to cast their vote. And some counties just don't do it. Every county is able to do it. And that matter has been settled in court.
All right. Al Schmidt with Committee of 70. Thank you so much for your time on what I am sure is a very busy night and what could be a very busy week. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Well, while much of the focus nationally is on the election in Pennsylvania, voters are also casting ballots today for key races in New Jersey and Delaware. NBC 10 was in Camden County earlier today, where we saw a few voters dropping off their ballots at the municipal building in Audubon. In New Jersey, voters are casting ballots for 12 U.S. House seats. Democrats are defending 10 seats to the Republicans' 2 in the first election since congressional districts were redrawn after the 2020 census. That includes Congressman Andy Kim, who is seeking re-election in the 3rd district in New Jersey. He faces Republican Bob Healy, who runs a yacht company, and there are also 2 other candidates in that race. This is one of the races we are watching tonight. Voters in Delaware also headed to the polls today. NBC 10 stopped by this polling station in North Wilmington, where voters are casting ballots for Attorney General and Auditor and for the state's lone House seat.
So tell me why is it important for you to be here today?
I think because of the way the whole economy has gone over the past 2 years. It's insane that the gas prices and food costs and the lockdowns and everything else that's happened, in Pennsylvania has really put us in the wrong direction.
It's the most important election of my lifetime, as far as I can remember.
Why do you say that? Why is it more important than, say, the presidential election 2 years ago?
Well, that was up to that point the most important one. But this is
do they just keep on getting more and more important? Is that what you're telling me?
But I think our whole voting system is going to be on the line here if we don't win the governorship, for instance, and if we don't have at least some majority in the Senate. I mean, it's just critical.
The last time we were talking big statewide races in Pennsylvania, it was 2020. And that, of course, was a presidential election year. This is a midterm election year with a Senate race and a governor's race. That's different, but we can still take a look at what happened in 2020 to give us a sense of what counties to watch and how things played out then. So let's take a look at what happened and how President Biden was able to win Pennsylvania. One of the ways he was able to do it was through our area, and specifically in the suburban counties surrounding Philadelphia. Now, he was able to boost the margins in these counties from what Hillary Clinton had in 2016. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Delaware County, an extra 5 points. Chester County, an extra 7%. Montgomery County, an extra 5% there. So he was able to get more votes from these counties. So we got one more county here, that's Bucks. And let's take a look specifically at that county. This is a more purple county in our area. In 2016, you can see it was very, very close. Hillary Clinton did win this county, but by less than a point. 4 years later, President Biden beat President Trump by 4 points. So he was able to get more votes there. So for Republicans, one of the paths that they will want to take is to take some of those suburban votes back and be able to get more votes in those suburban counties. And I can tell you that Dr. Mehmet Oz has been spending time in Bucks County, where there are a lot of Republican votes to get. Now, I mentioned that President Biden was able to boost the margins in those suburban counties. One place where he did not boost the margin was actually Philadelphia. Now, he did win Philadelphia, lots of Democrats in Philadelphia, but the margin slightly went down. So that was just something to keep in mind here as we look at what the turnout will be in Philadelphia, because for Democrats to win statewide, they really need Philadelphia to turn out. And so this is what has happened in recent years. These are the presidential years, and then these are the midterm years. And you can see there is quite a difference in how people turn out. So Philadelphia, the suburban counties surrounding it, one of the things we are watching tonight. One of the big races we're watching tonight is, of course, the governor's race to replace current Governor Tom Wolf. That is between Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano and Democrat Josh Shapiro. Here are the results as they are coming in right now. Of course, this is just the beginning. Only 9% reporting at this moment, but we'll be watching as these results come in all night. And of course, there is also the U.S. Senate race, which is being watched nationwide tonight. That is to replace retiring Republican Senator Pat Toomey. Here is where results stand right now as they are beginning to come in. Of course, TV personality Dr. Mehmet Oz is the Republican running against Democratic Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. We will continue to watch these results. Let's talk a little bit more about the Senate race now. It could have big implications nationwide. We've got team coverage for you tonight. Let's start with Danny Freeman, who is live at the Oz campaign tonight. Danny?
Hey, good evening, Lauren. You know, we've been in this Oz campaign headquarter election night event for a couple of hours now. And as you can see, the stage is now set. There are a lot more people that are actually out here. And we still expect a few more people to trickle in. But I just want to say, we're at the Newtown Athletic Club right here. And this is the same exact spot where folks came for Dr. Oz's primary night election party way back in May. And I got to say, the vibe here is much different. First of all, this is a much bigger space. Back when we were at the event in May, it almost had a kind of a cocktail party type feel. It was a much smaller room. There were fewer people. Already here, there are probably more people than there were at that party. So you can tell there's wine, there's drinks, there's a lot of festivity here. You can tell the campaign is trying to set itself up for a celebration tonight. However, if you also remember back to May, it took several weeks to get a definitive result in this race. It took a recount as well. So hopefully we won't have to wait that long, but we shall see if we do end up with a result tonight. We're, of course, a little while past poll close and still don't have that answer, whether Oz or Fetterman are going to walk away as the next senator of Pennsylvania. But we'll bring more updates to you as we have it. For now, live in Newtown, Danny Freeman, NBC 10.
All right, thanks, Danny. Let's turn now to Pittsburgh, where NBC 10's Johnny Archer is joining us from Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman's headquarters. Johnny?
Hey there, Lauren. Yeah, supporters of John Fetterman are just starting to flow in here at this election party in Pittsburgh. No sign of the lieutenant governor just yet, but he is, as we know, in a neck-and-neck race for that U.S. Senate seat against Republican Mehmet Oz. And not only are people from around the state of Pennsylvania watching this race, but also people from around the country. This race could essentially determine who takes control over the Senate chambers. We know yesterday that the Fetterman campaign filed that lawsuit to hopefully get mail-in ballots counted that were actually improperly dated. So they're hoping to get that in their favor. The Fetterman campaign knows that this could benefit them, considering historically Democrats tend to vote in early. Yesterday, John Fetterman, he was all over the state, crisscrossing, making stops in Chester County, also Northwest Philadelphia, including here in Pittsburgh. Earlier this morning, he cast his ballot alongside his wife in his hometown of Braddock, where he was once the mayor of that city from 2006 to 2019. But right now, Fetterman, as these votes come in and these votes are counted, he holds a considerable lead, but we are still in the early phases of this counting process. We still have a long way to go. Like I said, this will probably be a very, very close race, and we might not know the final results for quite some time. Lauren?
Johnny. I want to bring in now Jim Schultz. He is a Republican, and he is an attorney in the Philadelphia area, and also worked in the White House counsel's office during the Trump administration. Jim Schultz, are you with us? And
I'm with you.
There we have Jim. Jim, you are in an interesting situation tonight. You are a Republican, but you are splitting your ticket this year. You are supporting Dr. Mehmet Oz for Senate, but supporting Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, for governor. First of all, what is tonight like for you?
It's a big night for Pennsylvania. We're going to have a great governor in Josh Shapiro. I'm proud to have supported him. Turnout was really good for him in the places that he needed it, and I expect a big win for him tonight. So I'm feeling really good about it. I think we're going to have to wait some time to see what happens with the Senate race.
I've spoken with some Republican candidates recently who hesitated to tell me if they were going to be supporting the entire Republican ticket. One didn't tell me at all. And I wonder what that does for Republicans not to have that sort of unified force heading into midterms like this.
Look, I think the Republicans are going to have a lot of wins. The governor's race isn't going to be one of them. And I think that's what we've seen time and time again out of Republicans in this cycle. They're either hedging or they're moving over to Josh, and some are supporting Mastriano. But I think there are a lot of folks that want to see more unity in government in Harrisburg and more getting done in Harrisburg that benefits the folks of this great Commonwealth. And I think the legislature and the governor will work well together in this next administration.
As you have been talking to your fellow Republicans, are there more like you out there that maybe we don't know about who are doing the split ticket the way you are?
Look, to get a big win in Pennsylvania, you need to get both Democratic, Independent, and Republican votes. I expect Josh is going to get a lot of Republican votes tonight.
All right, Jim Schultz, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, well, a newly released NBC News poll is giving us final insight into the landscape on this election day. Let's take a look at this poll coming out from NBC News. You can see Democrats caught up to the GOP in election enthusiasm there. 73% of voters from both parties saying they have high interest in this year's election. We'll see if that comes out in the turnout. Meanwhile, if voters could send a message with their vote to Congress, the three main topics they would want to focus on are to fix the economy, end partisanship, and women's rights. Well, speaking of the economy, who gets elected does impact your wallet. Voters are concerned with inflation, stock markets being down, and concerns about a recession. NBC 10's Keith Jones reports.
Voters say their number one priority is what's in their wallet.
And definitely the economy, gas prices, food prices. I'm single. I'm a teacher, but I have 5 other jobs.
Big thing that's driving my vote is just trying to get a handle on inflation and try to hopefully make a difference.
But economists point out inflation is the result of complex global forces, and it's the independent Federal Reserve, not Congress, that's actually in charge of fighting inflation.
The reality is that elected officials really don't have a lot of tools at their disposal that can address inflation.
But what they can do is impact taxes or pass spending bills. President Biden is defending his record.
Since I came to office, we've created 10 million brand new jobs.
While Republicans blame high inflation on the current administration.
Inflation is all tied to reckless government spending.
If Republicans take control of Congress, they're expected to extend or reinstate Trump-era tax cuts on corporations and wealthy individuals, a move the president is likely to resist.
So they can talk a lot about wanting to cut taxes or extend the 2017 tax cut, but they will have to negotiate essentially with the White House to achieve what it is they want to do.
If Democrats stay in control, they might push for expanded social benefits like paid family leave and universal pre-K, and extend the child tax credit. For millions of Americans looking at their sagging investments and retirement accounts, a smooth, fair election should help boost stock markets, regardless of which party comes out on top. Keith Jones, NBC 10 News.
It's very important. It's actually life-defining right now.
Life-defining. It's that big. Why do you call it life-defining?
Well, with everything going on around us, inflation and crime, it's huge. It's huge. Things are only going to get worse if we don't make a change.
I'm currently pregnant with a baby girl, so voting for her future.
I don't know how you can be on the fence. Our democracy is at stake. Women's rights are at stake. I don't see how you can be on the fence. You have to take it seriously. I do.
We're getting some new information from NBC News exit polls. This is where people are telling us how they feel about certain issues as they are going to vote. So let's take a look at some of this new information that we're getting in from the exit polls. First thing that we're asking people, what's the biggest issue? What's the top issue facing the country? Almost a third of people saying that top issue is inflation. That's followed by abortion, crime, gun policy, and immigration. And let's go a little bit deeper inside these numbers. The way people are feeling about the issue of inflation, that varies. And let me show you. For Republicans, 44% of them are saying that that is the top issue. So that's more than this here. Democrats, it is very different. Only 15% of them are putting that as the top issue. And then independents, 35% are saying that inflation is the top issue. So that is closer to how Republicans feel. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that shakes out. Let's take a look at another exit poll that we are getting in. And this one is about President Biden's policies and how people feel they are impacting the country. 46% here saying that those policies are hurting the country. 36% saying that they are helping the country. And, President Biden has said that this election is not a referendum, that it is a choice. But certainly voters are coming to the polls. They are going to vote with opinions. And we'll just have to see how that influences the way they vote. Let's take another look as the results are coming in this evening. Only 10% reporting at this point. We've got a long way to go, but here's a look at where things stand in the governor's race right now. Democrat Josh Shapiro against Republican Doug Mastriano. They're, again, just the beginning as the results are coming in. Polls are now closed in most of the state. In our area, they are, but they are still open in Luzerne County because of an issue with ballots there, and they'll be open until 10 o'clock there. So we won't have any results from Luzerne County for quite a while. And let's take a look at the race for U.S. Senate as the results are coming in at this moment. Of course, we've got Democrat John Fetterman running against Republican Mehmet Oz for that Senate seat. That is to replace Republican Senator Pat Toomey. That is a seat that is being closely watched, not just in our area, not just across Pennsylvania, but across the entire country tonight, because it could determine the balance of power in the Senate. Let's go over to New Jersey. Voters are casting ballots for 12 U.S. House seats. Democrats are defending 10 seats to the Republicans' 2 in the first election since congressional districts were redrawn after the 2020 census. And one of the races we are watching tonight is Congressman Andy Kim seeking re-election in the 3rd district. He is the Democrat in that race, and he is facing Republican Bob Healy. He runs a yacht company. We have seen a lot of ads in that race, a lot of money in that race, and we are watching that race closely tonight. Pennsylvania, though, back in Pennsylvania, crucial to the balance of power in Washington. The decisions voters made today and made in those ballots that they've turned in recent days, they could play a big role, not just in who controls the Senate, but also who controls the House.
Are you ready to fire Nancy Pelosi? Are you ready to fire Chuck Schumer?
In Chester County, the head of the Republican National Committee laying out goals for this midterm election and a strategy.
When you talk to your neighbors and you talk to your friends, point out the fact that lives are harder, that people are suffering, and that the Democrats continually turn their back on the suffering of Pennsylvanians and Americans across this country.
Republicans pushing messages on inflation and crime here and across the country as they look to win back control of the House, maybe the Senate, too. Democrats pushing back.
We are in a campaign to fight for voting rights.
Yeah.
We are in a campaign to fight for women's rights.
Yeah.
We're in a campaign to fight for union rights.
Yeah.
And the rest of President Biden's term is on the line.
President Biden's agenda will all come down to this Senate seat, and we know John Fetterman is going to be victorious.
Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz are running to replace Republican Senator Pat Toomey. If Republicans keep his Pennsylvania seat and gain just one more to make 51, they can take control of the Senate. If Democrats flip this seat and hold on to their others, they get a bigger majority, making it easier to pass what they want. Pennsylvania voters also play a role in what happens in the House. Once everything shakes out, Republicans need to gain just 5 seats to take control. That doesn't leave Democrats much wiggle room for losses. The way congressional maps are drawn, some seats are naturally more competitive than others, and Democrats are defending more so-called toss-ups in Pennsylvania than in any other state. One is a seat held by Congresswoman Susan Wild in the Lehigh Valley. Another includes the Scranton and Wilkes-Barre areas, and the 17th district outside of Pittsburgh is open after Congressman Connor Lamb leaves following his unsuccessful bid for Senate. Republicans and Democrats both arguing the stakes are high.
I don't think
any of us can remember an election in our lifetimes that was as important as this one.
It's going to shape what this country looks like for the next decade or more.
And the outcome of the election matters. All right, we are continuing to watch the big races tonight, and you can count on us to get you through this election night and potentially for the days to come. For now, thanks for watching this NBC 10 special coverage of Decision 2022. Be sure to join us on NBC 10 News at 11 o'clock. I'm Lauren Make. And once again, don't forget you can join Tracy and myself and Jim for a special hour-long edition of NBC 10 News at 11. We'll have results from the 3 states in our region as they come in.